Hi everyone. We ended 2023 on a really high note, having managed to hit 5,000 subscribers just before Christmas. To celebrate, I thought I'd give you all the chance to know me a little better by answering 30 Thomas related questions. I saw someone do this on Twitter a while back, and I thought it could make for a fun video. If you feel like answering the questions for yourself, then I will have them all posted in the description and pinned in the comments. Like, subscribe, ring Toby's bell, and with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Favorite character? James. I might go more in depth in this on a video of its own in the future, but to sum it up, to me, James is one of the most entertaining characters, and as a result, he's one of the easiest to use, which opens up many more story opportunities for him. You can put this guy in any situation and instantly know how he'd react. By extension, James is probably the most consistently written character throughout the show's history. Not to mention, he's one of the funniest. I get the feeling that he's a really fun character to write for. If I were to write my own Thomas story, James would no doubt be either the protagonist or a major player within it. I could go on and on about why I love James, but I think I'll save that for another day. Favorite episode? Too many to choose from, so I'll just pick my favorite from each of the classic seasons. These are the ones that typically come to my mind first when thinking about a specific season. Troublesome Trucks, Old Iron, Percy's Promise, Grandpuff, Toby and the Flood, Scaredy Engines, and James and the Queen of Sodor. I'll go into more depth on these episodes in the future, as well as others when I finally get around to doing my countdowns for my favourite episodes for each character. Favourite season? Ooh, this is a tough one. I thoroughly enjoy all 7 classic seasons, but if I had to sum it up, it would either be season 1, 4, or 5. To be fair, I have also come to appreciate certain seasons in recent times, such as seasons 8 and 9 from the Hit era, and of course the likes of seasons 19 and 20 from the Brenner era. Despite airing 7 years before I was born, season 1 was my first real exposure to Thomas. I have very fond memories of rewatching the Troublesome Trucks VHS. The simplistic art style, combined with Ringo Starr's calming and easygoing narration, made me feel like I had been sucked into a storybook world, which is a perfect start for a TV show that is based on a book series originally intended to be a bunch of bedtime stories. Season 4, in many ways, is season 1, but on steroids. It returned to focusing on Railway series original stories. In addition, whereas season 1 looked like a storybook's drawings come to life, season 4 looked like actual photos came to life. It might just be my favourite looking season. Hell, I even find Michelangelo's narration to be similar to Ringo's in a way. He has such a great range of emotion and depth to his delivery. I wholeheartedly believe that Angelus is objectively the best narrator. And of course, season 5 is just an action-packed rollercoaster. In terms of scope and scale, it really does feel like the biggest and grandest season of the show. Which makes sense, since they were pushing the boundaries to see just how cinematic they could be. With all of that said, the season that I almost always initially think of when remembering childhood memories of Thomas is the one that kickstarted it all, season 1. While each of the 4 following Golden Era seasons would make improvements, the first season was the one that I always found myself being able to escape reality with. You can call it nostalgia bias if you want, but I honestly don't care. Season 1 of Thomas the Tank Engine may not objectively be the best season, but for me at least, it holds a very special place in my heart. Without it, I don't think my fondness for the series as a whole would have blossomed as much as it did. Favourite narrator? Ringo Starr. It might be considered basic or boring to name the first ever narrator as someone's favourite, but who cares? Ringo was my first narrator, and I have to say that his performance is one of the key factors in what drew me into and got me hooked on the series. Britt Allcroft wanted Ringo as the narrator because he had that natural bedtime story-esque voice. It's how I would imagine a grandfather reading a bedtime story would sound like, which was the main goal. Similar to Pierce Brosnan many years later, Ringo's naturally calm voice just aided me in escaping reality. While I don't think that Ringo is objectively the best narrator, he is still really talented and great at what he does. Some of his lines and deliveries are just iconic or funny.
Rubbish!
And in some cases, better than anything the other narrators could pull off. Though I guess that goes without saying, as all narrators have their own individual strengths and talents. Ringo, hands down, does my favourite Diesel voice.
Good morning, per Diesel in an oily voice. Pleased to meet you, Duck. Is that James and Henry and Gordon too? We come to a yard and improve it. We are revolutionary. Diesel lost patience. Grr, grr. He roared. Grr, grr.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
While I do love Michael Angelis and Pierce Brosnan, and also really appreciate certain aspects that the other narrators brought to the show, I honestly don't think that any of them could have drawn me in as much as the Beatle did. Peace and love, Ringo. Peace and love. Favourite location? This is a tough one. If you were to ask me where I would choose to live on Sodor, I'd probably say Crovan's Gate, as it's not too big for me, like a city, but it's still bustling enough for me to have plenty to do. Plus, having access to both the Northwestern and Skarloey railways is just a matter of pure convenience, and would allow me to explore the beauty of all aspects of the island. In terms of places that I love the look of, there are so many, but some standouts are Gordon's Hill, the Mountain Railway, the Watermill, and the Viaduct, all classic locations. Favourite theme? The Runaway theme. The action scenes in Thomas are some of my favourite moments, and the Runaway theme perfectly adds to the urgency of these scenes. If you were to ask me what my favourite character theme is, then I'd probably have to say Toby's theme. It's old-timey, but is also jolly and has a spring to it, just like Toby. I can't help but tap my feet or knees whenever I hear this beautiful melody. Funniest moment? There are a good handful to choose from. I never outright laughed at anything as a kid, mostly because I wasn't really paying attention to that side of things. But now, there are several things that make me crack a smile or even snigger. The one that usually comes to my mind is the entire episode of Thomas and the Jet Engine. I think this is one that people often think of when discussing funny moments in the show. It's a very outlandish episode for the show at this point in time, but the whole concept and how it is pulled off is hilarious. My favourite part is that scene where Gordon is happily boasting to himself, and Thomas just completely one-ups him. Amazing. There are some other moments that get me going as well. Duncan's accident in Duncan Duncan always gets me. The whole runaway in Busy going backwards is great. I love Diesel's comeuppance in World's Strongest Engine, Percy getting scared by the Chinese dragon, etc, etc. One of the key elements that makes Thomas and Friends so good is the variety of tones that it brings to its audience. And comedy, along with pretty much every other one, is done brilliantly. Least favourite character? Billy. He's ugly and annoying. Enough said. Least favourite episode? Either Edward Strikes Out, or anything that portrayed Skarloey as a timid child. Skarloey going from a respectable badass old man to a terrified child is just sacrilege. As for Edward Strikes Out, if you want to write an episode where Edward has these specific flaws, then just do a flashback story to when he was young. It would not only give us some new info on Edward, but also show us a bit of how he became the wise old leader that he is in the show's modern day. He wasn't always old after all. Least favourite season? I know that it's cliche to name one of the early CGI seasons as the worst or least favourite. The episodes are boring, the structure of the episodes is very repetitive, their characters are almost always portrayed as stupid and unlikable, and so on. You know the drill. Now I know that it may seem hypocritical of me to say that a CGI season is my least favourite, since I'm not massively familiar with it as a whole. So to compromise, I'll also include my least favourite season from the model series. That would have to be season 12. I won't bash on it too much for how bad the CGI faces look on the models, as this was their first attempt with CGI, and I do appreciate the attempt to make the engines' mouths finally move when they speak. My main issue with the season is the episodes themselves. I have to admit that I was pleasantly surprised at how many decent episodes there are in the hit era when I finally returned to it. Granted, each season is very up and down and not very consistent in terms of quality, however season 12 is the lowest in that regard, in my opinion. The only episode that is not too boring for me is James Works It Out, and that's because of the fact that James and Hector are a unique character combo. Well, that and the fact that James was the most consistently written character throughout this era of the show. Overall, not a big fan of this season. Least favourite narrator would probably have to be Marco Brandon. His narrations and the voices he gives for various characters just don't do it for me. Favourite special? Ooh, that's a tough one. For me, it comes down to choosing between The Great Discovery, Blue Mountain Mystery, and Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure, all three of which are fantastic movies. But after taking the time to think about it, I think I might have to go with The Great Discovery. My reason being is that this is just a beautiful swan song for the model series, which is of course the most cherished and beloved version of the entire show. So many characters return in this, and it's just glorious. The movie in itself is also really good too. We get to see Thomas's classic personality on display again, and he has a really nice character arc. Learning to respect Stanley and taking responsibility for his actions. Great Waterton is a cool location too. Despite the hit era messing a lot of things up, one thing that it consistently did was expand the world and the lore of Sodor, which is very in spirit of the original Railway series. Every book that Wilbur Awdry wrote introduced something new, and the model series did that right up until the end. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the narrator for this movie, Pierce Brosnan. When I first discovered he narrated this movie, my mind flipped, and I loved his performance from the moment I heard it. Pierce reads the script for this movie like he's reading a bedtime story, which is also in the spirit of the original Railway series, and even season 1 to some degree. The Great Discovery is a reinforcement and reminder to why Thomas and Friends was and is so loved as a series. Least favourite special? Misty Island Rescue. My issues with this film have been pretty much summed up by other YouTubers by this point. Almost every decision is illogical and stupid, Thomas himself is annoying and horrible, and certain plot points just don't go anywhere, etc, etc. Let's just move on. Overrated character? I don't know, I don't really pay attention to that side of the fandom, to be honest. If I were to mention a character that I don't really care much for, I'd probably say Emily. I don't mind the motherly figure that she is in season 7, but I just find her character to be all over the place afterwards, and it just took her a while to find her footing. Not really a character that I think all that much about, but hey, if you like her, that's cool. Being able to find enjoyment out of a character that someone else doesn't necessarily have a high opinion of is badass. Underrated character? Boko. I've seen some people say that Boko is insignificant and doesn't do anything relevant in the series. And to that I say, what did Boko do in both the Railway series and the TV show? He humbled Gordon, and as a result of this he put an end to Gordon being rude and boastful. He was the one to make Duck, Donald and Douglas overcome their prejudice of diesels. He learned how to handle Bill and Ben, something only Edward was able to do prior, and could even turn their antics against them. He also rescues Gordon in the story Fire Escape after the Big Blue Engine loses a part of his fire. Now that I think about it, I'm shocked that Gordon and Boko were never properly paired up together, which would have made for a good story opportunity. And speaking of missed opportunities, I think that's why Boko is often forgotten, because although he has had some good appearances, they aren't as impactful or memorable as some other side characters. Boko had a lot of untapped potential in the show. Thankfully, his potential has been brought to life by dedicated fans. Usual Bloke Luke made an excellent video talking about this very topic. Be sure to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description. Favourite Steam character? No idea. Favorite Diesel character? Diesel. Who doesn't love a good antagonist? Diesel made quite an impact when he first debuted, being a dastardly character that manipulated others and got people sent away. There are plenty of kids shows that have had scheming characters, no question, but Diesel can stand on his own. He has quite a good range in the CGI series too, ranging from irredeemable villain to sympathetic villain, or even just as a foil to others. I am biased towards his classic irredeemable side because he's just more fun to me that way. Every time Diesel returned, it always made me think, oh god, what's he gonna do now? He also introduced Diesels as a whole to the series, which of course is very notable. You can't go wrong with a good Diesel episode. Favorite rolling stock character or characters? Probably Toad. I like how he gets a lot of beefing up in season 5. If I recall correctly, I think he might have been the first rolling stock character to get a spotlight episode. Really surprising that it wasn't Annie and Clarabelle. Favorite non-rail character? Probably Harold. This is largely a result of his rivalry with Percy. I've said this before, but I actually prefer this rivalry to the Thomas and Bertie one. Percy is a character who can get easily irritated, and Harold, being stuffy and somewhat stuck up, clearly rubs him the wrong way. Every time these two interact is just pure comedy.
I always said railways were out of date, but you're so slow with the post, you should give everyone their stamps back. Post haste.
Hello, Lazy Wings. Are you too tired to fly today?
The wind's too strong. I've been grounded.
You need rails. They work wonders, you know. Always.
Harold told me you were a wizard. He says he can beat you at some things, but not at being a submarine.
Maybe we should take the mailbags a few at a time. They're very heavy.
I'd have to make too many trips. Then I'd be as slow as Percy.
Fancy taking the mail, Harold? I'll stand by with the rescue team.
That being said, Harold isn't a complete arsehole, and he does mean well. It's nice to see when he actually shows appreciation towards others, or when he goes out of his way to help them. He might have a high opinion of himself, but he isn't above being brought back down to earth. Also, his theme song is just epic. Favorite human character? The Fat Controller. The idea that Sir Topham Hatt is an evil slave driver is completely stupid and total bullshit. He has consistently shown that he cares deeply about his engines as if they were his own children. And as a result, the engines all care and love him back. If he was really evil, do you actually think that they would have all gone on strike in an attempt to save his job? Of course not. He's also a dedicated family man, as we see in his first Spotlight episode. Aside from Thomas, he is the most recurring character in the series, and he's certainly the most impactful human within the show. Favorite hit era newbie? Probably Mighty Mac. The idea of having a double-ended Farley engine is a really cool concept, and one that I wish was used more. Mighty Mac had a decent introduction and didn't really do much after that. Would have loved to have seen them come back in CGI. A couple honourable mentions would include Rosie and Hector, both decent characters in their own right. Favourite CGI newbie? Victor. I feel like Victor, along with Hero, are the two highest contenders for most people's favourite CGI exclusive characters. Don't get me wrong, I love Hero, and I do think that he is the best the show has ever done in terms of international representation, but Victor is a close second in that regard. The movie Blue Mountain Mystery is really what sealed the deal for me. Not only do we get to learn more about Victor's past and where he comes from, but we also get to learn that he taught himself to speak English simply by listening to other people's conversations. If that isn't inspirational, then I don't know what is. On top of that, Victor is one of the few characters that Thomas is never rude to and even has something of an uncle-nephew-esque relationship with. I always love it when we see a character that Thomas genuinely looks up to, and it's easy to see why he does. Victor, like Edward, and even Hero, treats everyone, including Thomas, like an equal, and as a result, Thomas respects him back. Victor is someone that the others can always count on, and that alone makes it hard not to appreciate him. Favourite song? Thomas's Anthem. I love all of the classic songs, but this one just encapsulates my feelings for both Thomas and the show as a whole. Thomas and Friends was my childhood. It was my escape from reality, and is the fictional world that I wanted to live in the most. As a result, Thomas's Anthem just sums up my feelings towards Thomas, the show and its world as a whole. Least favourite song? A Day Out with Percy. It's not a bad song, but there isn't really anything in the song that implies we are spending time with Percy. The only real hint that that is the case is the music video, which primarily shows footage of the titular character. How did you get into Thomas? It came on the TV once when I was at an age too young to remember, and I've been hooked on it ever since. Don't ask me what episode came on the TV because I have no idea. Do you keep up with the current series? No. The current state of the show has killed my interest in Thomas, so unless it undergoes a major change, then I doubt I'll be keeping up with anything in the modern show. Do you have any headcanons? Not really. I would like to have believed that Thomas and Tugs existed in the same universe, what with Big Mickey's reveal at Brendam Docks. Maybe he did survive his ordeal in Big City, but the Tugs weren't aware of it. I would love to make a video one day talking about how I would have made a crossover movie for these two franchises, because I have plenty of ideas for it. Big Mickey would almost certainly have a scene in it. Favourite piece of fan-made content? Any Cole will do. This is one of the fantastic fan-made episodes created by Carson's Workshop and written by the Buried Truck. Plot-wise, a new coal plant on the mainland sends a batch of coal to Sodor as a token of goodwill. A few engines test the coal, including the new fan-made character Richard. After Richard returns home covered in soot and struggling to breathe as a result of the new coal, a sympathetic Oliver starts boasting about how he managed to escape to Sodor using bad coal. Duck decides to put Oliver in his place and tricks him into agreeing to use the new coal instead of Richard, which of course bites him in the ass. The coal takes effect, Oliver breaks down, Richard comes to the rescue, and Oliver quietly admits that he was wrong. I love this episode because of how well it uses all of its characters. Oliver's cockiness flares up, and as a result his confidence is shaken, and he ends up eating his own words. Duck's prankster side shines through in all its glorious fashion, which is always a treat to see. You may or may not have noticed, but whenever Duck does pull a prank on someone, it's not done just for shits and giggles. No, it's done to teach his victims a lesson, and that is exactly what he does here. And of course, you've got good old Richard, who despite being a fan-made character, feels very natural to the Thomas universe. In some ways, he reminds me of Warrior from Tugs, what with being a big, strong, friendly, yet not too bright and somewhat clumsy guy. Obviously Carson's videos are beautifully made too. I would tell you guys to go check out Carson's work, but who am I kidding? I know you already have. Unpopular opinion. Not sure if this is an unpopular opinion, but an episode that I really like, that I haven't seen too many people appreciate, is Percy's Chocolate Crunch. It is a little bit repetitive, yes. However, I actually find it to be a relatable story. Percy keeps trying to get on with his work, only everything goes wrong for him at every turn. No wonder he keeps complaining. We've all had those days when nothing goes right for us. If you could rewrite one episode, which one and how? You can do it, Toby. Some of you might have been expecting Saving Edward or even Edward Strikes Out, and while I would like to give those ones a rewrite, You Can Do It, Toby simply comes to my mind first. Obviously, my issue with the episode is Toby being overly self-conscious. I don't mind Toby having some doubts about being able to push Gordon up the hill, since that would be a tremendous task for him, one that he hasn't done on that scale before. But letting Gordon's words get to him and having doubts that he can shunt trucks just doesn't fit his character. I also feel that Toby's true personality, aka his jokey old grandpa that doesn't care, would have just made for some fun banter between him and Gordon. I think that's why his interactions with James are so entertaining, and since Gordon and James have a lot of similarities, not allowing for such banter between these two just feels like a wasted opportunity. Maybe one day I'll make an edit with my proposed fix. There's my answers to 30 Thomas related questions. Feel free to let me know your own answers in the comments section. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed. Now until next time, I've been Sinners and Ashes UK, you've been awesome, and have a great day. Bye!